Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Good evening to the listening public. The wonderful people here on the island of Nevis, those on St. Kitts, or as they say, St. Christopher, and those who are throughout the Caribbean Sea. Good evening to one and all, those of our friends and family in the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, and we know we have fans in places like Belize and Taiwan and Grenada, wherever you are. Good evening to you. Welcome to another edition of On the Mark. My name is Mark Brantley. I'm the Premier of Nevis, but more importantly tonight and on Wednesday nights, I'm the host of the show. And what we try to do here is to have conversations which are of value to the community. We've been at this for quite some time now, going into our second decade. And so we have, in many ways, enjoyed this show together over that long period of time. This is Talk Radio at its best, 2 hours of commercial-free radio every Wednesday from 8 to 10. We remain the only show that is commercial-free in the Federation, and that is designed to allow us maximum opportunity to engage with our audiences, to engage in terms of our discussions, and of course to ensure that we have meaningful discussions, impactful discussions where issues of the day are ventilated. Now tonight we have a show of a difference. I had quite a lot to get through, but when members from the Rastafarian community come calling, I try to accommodate them because I believe that they have something important to say, and we have had some rigorous and vigorous discussions over the years on a number of topics. On some, they have proven over time to be right on issues such as marijuana and the like. On others, we are still out at sea. We still have debates that are going on. But let's face it, this is a community of individuals who are peaceful, who have contributed to the upkeep. And one thing I always say, that despite what many have said, despite the oppression that Rastafarians across the world have experienced over the years, we hardly ever hear of them involved in activity which is antisocial, activity which is criminal. And they have conducted themselves, I believe, generally with a high degree of morality and a high degree of public and civic awareness. And so tonight we have someone with us who is no stranger to the show. What we are going to do tonight is that ordinarily when I have these what I would call big guests, important guests come to the show, we would do a full 2 hour. But tonight I said we had so much to discuss that I've offered them the hour. They have agreed. And so for the first half of the show from 8 until 9, we're going to just have a discussion about what's going on. African Liberation Day, which I'm told is tomorrow. And we're going to have some discussions around that, surrounding that, and of course surrounding the activities that would be planned and executed in relation to that. So let me, without further ado, say good evening to one and all. Congratulations, of course, and felicitations to all those who are celebrating birthdays, anniversaries, commiserations, and prayers for speedy recovery for all those who might be hospitalized or in ill health in some way. I remember especially my beloved mother-in-law Joan. I pray, Joan, if you're listening, that you feel much better. We look forward to you being back home with us very soon. We are all praying for you, as indeed we're praying for all of those who might be going through some challenges at this point in time. So we really hope that our people are doing well, notwithstanding the rigors of life and the vicissitudes of life. And we certainly look forward tonight for your attention. Those who can call, we expect you to call when we open the lines, and those who just want to listen, you're also welcome. So let me not delay further. It is already 7 minutes past the hour, and so let me introduce my guest and sort of turn things over to him so that he can talk to you. As I said, he's no stranger. My brother Ras Iroy is here, and he is, of course, a long-time member of various organizations promoting Rastafari, promoting the beliefs. He has been on the forefront of the debates about marijuana, ganja, sensimilia, the herb, whatever word you want to use or language you want to use to describe it. And we've had some good discussions. I said we haven't always agreed, but one thing I will say, we have never been disagreeable. And so I welcome you to the show and hand things over to you so you can say who you are, introduce yourself, and of course talk to the people about what is happening and what is happening for African liberation.
Yes, I greetings, and I greet you in the divine and majestic name of His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie I and Empress Menen, our great ancestors the great gods and goddesses of this beautiful, eternal African race. Yeah, I just want to bless each and every one on this day, the eve of African Liberation Day. You know, I want to touch on all the Rastafari queens and kings and youths and elders, you know, who might be listening or who might just be a part of the Rastafari community. Our work, according to His Majesty, has been and is very purposeful. And so just a word of encouragement for I and I to just stand firm. We have been moving mountains, and there are many more to be moved, you know. But today I just want to come and touch and reflect and add a bit of eye liberation to the African Liberation Day. Give you an idea what we've been doing, what is happening locally and across the waters over in St. Kitts. But more so to reflect on African Liberation Day and what it meant and what it should mean and the direction it should take us in this year time. African Liberation Day on the 25th of May, and this was way back in 1958 in Accra, Ghana, when 8 independent African heads of state would have met, and the discussions that usually take place around the talk shops and so on, you know, not wanting to be under colonial rule and this oppressive system. And so they would have met and decided, hey, it's about time we take a stand, a united stand. And that would have magnified, and 5 years after, in 1963, you had some 32 heads of African state at that time. So over the 5-year span, you would have seen the level and the heights of fight against colonial oppression. And so in 63 you had 32 heads of state there, and what was now formed was the OAU. At first you would find in the early stages in 58 it was called Africa Day. But 5 years after, when they met, it was renamed African Liberation Day, and thus the formation of the organization of African unity. And what we would see is basically the same cry across the African continent. You know, those who were able to gain their freedom, their independence, you know, and those who were still fighting, still in the process. It was all about, we've had enough. We've seen the level of discrimination. We've seen how these countries, the colonial powers, basically would have raped our countries, and the way they have left us, or the state that they now have us. And so it was a united effort to, you know, celebrate the victory and reflect on the struggles of the African people over that period of time. It was also a time to reflect and pay homage and tribute to the matriarchs and patriarchs, you know, the kings and queens who would have fought and died, you know, just keeping that whole African struggle and that struggle for liberation. And then, of course, you know, you would see that it also talk about the state that we are in now. Make us take a deep look as to the condition of us as a people, as a black race, you know, the state that we are in, politically, economically, and all the other collies. And make us also take a serious approach into where we need to be in the future and what we need to do to get there. And sometimes that in itself could be termed as quite revolutionary, because that's what it is. For I and I to achieve that true African liberation, we must have a revolution in terms of the mindset of our people. And sometimes it might have to be a radical revolution, because you'll be going against the system and the norms, so to speak. Now, for I and I as a people, every year we reflect an African Liberation Day and what it did, and but in terms of how I see ourselves at this time, reflecting on the struggles that a lot of our forefathers would have gone through, the sacrifices they would have made, and I am not too sure how pleased some of them would be at this time, because we can look back and see some of the same or similar issues which our foreparents would have had, why they would have seen it necessary to come together. And I hope tonight we could touch on some of them and try and find out where we see ourselves and what we can be doing as a small nation to ensure that we achieve the level of liberation. Too many of our African leaders are sleeping. And when I say African leaders, not necessarily continental Africa. I see leaders such as Mr. Brantley, I see Mr. Jew, I see Brown in Antigua. What we call our leaders of our black nations, or black countries, the Caribbean, leaders in the diaspora. And how much are we doing as a people? How much are we doing as leaders to make that step into liberation? I mean, we could understand, we could over some of the struggles and the hardships, and even when times come to make decisions, simply because of how our countries now are constructed, multinationals and so on, people of all different races. We are selling passports, and so you find, as much as we want to claim these little islands for our own, there's still so much other people out there who now have economic and political rights. And so in order to balance that whole movement between your local people and what you should do for your nation, and still trying to please what we call the colonial masters, it can be tough at times, but this is exactly what independence is all about.
So let me ask you, I don't want to interject unduly because I know you have a lot to get through, but usually we try to have a conversation. So you talk about liberation, but I'm a little curious as to what does that mean in your eyes? How does liberation look? Because the bit that you've just introduced about having this space for ourselves and this being our country, I don't know that there's any country anywhere in the world which is an island on its own. There's, especially today, a level of interconnectivity between countries where everybody talk about a global village, and I think that in many respects it's true. The degree to which people are moving, the mobility of capital, the mobility of labor, it is inevitable that you're going to have people of different races and different backgrounds coming together, that melting pot, so to speak. So I'm curious as to how you see, because sometimes, and you use the word revolution, and I know you don't. Well, let me not speak for you. I don't think you meant a sort of violent revolution, but as you say, revolution of our thinking. But my question really is, you hear some commentators seem to have a sort of all or nothing approach. So Marcus Garvey, for example, talked about actually going back to Africa, and that people should seek to journey back to the motherland. Others have advocated a principle of us being here, but this being our country in the sense that it must be for the black people. Yet others have said, listen, perhaps we need a more moderate approach, an approach that looks at what has transpired and really takes a wholesale view of our history. For example, Ras Iroy, I ask the question all the time. I'm not sure I have a satisfactory answer myself, or indeed I've heard a satisfactory answer, but I ask the question all the time. What really are these Caribbean islands? Are they black? Are they brown? Are they mixed? Are they Indian? Because when we look at the history that we are told and taught, the Europeans came and they met some people. It wasn't black people they met when they came. They met, we are told, the AROSS and Caribs, and the indigenous people that they were referred to. Later, through the evil of slavery, they brought black people to our shores. And through years of rape and interrelationships and that kind, you have people emerging. You have every hue and color in the region, every eye color, every hair type in the region. How do you then, in that circumstance, with that history, view the issue of liberation? What does it mean? Because if some people will argue that, listen, you have black in you, maybe majority black, you have melanin in your skin, but you may have some European in you too. Right? You have grown in a culture which is not uniquely African, because your school system, the fact that you play cricket and all of these things have nothing to do with Africa. They came out of Europe. And so who are we as a people? I have heard, for example, Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, use a term that I myself use from time to time, of our Caribbean civilization. And I believe he uses that language because, in part, he recognizes that we are not really African, nor are we European, nor are we Arawak or Carib. We are, in a very real way, an amalgamation of various cultures coming together in this space. So if you decide tomorrow that I cleave to my African ancestry, what stops somebody from asking you, but Mr. Pinney, Rasairai, when we search through your history, we find that there's name Pinney, that came out of Liverpool, came out of Scotland somewhere. And how do you then say, well, no, I want nothing to do with that aspect of my past. I'm going to only hold on to this aspect of it. Because good, bad, or indifferent, it is all part of the past. So those are some of the kind of issues. So when people talk about liberation, I always wonder, what do they mean?
Loaded. The one is loaded. However, I hope you will realize why I prefer to be called Rasai.
Yes, I understand.
But that Pinney is going to make it easier for me when it comes to some reparations. It's going to be easier for us to make the claim, so it would be done in due time, at the right time. But most importantly, liberation. A waking up of a people.
Mm-hmm.
A change of consciousness, a change of mindset. Most of the times we are talking coming out of an oppressed state, doing things, changing the mindset, setting the stage so as to make it easier, so as to alleviate that level of oppression that you're getting. It comes in many ways. The liberation of the mind is something that is very important and practically foremost, because you must have to start to develop the level of consciousness in order to go and take actions. And so, for me, some of the experiences in my life, my deep interest in history coming up in school, are the things that would have pointed me to certain directions. And as such, I realized in order for me to regain the strength and the heights and the positivity of what it really means to be a black person, I must have to change my lifestyle. I must have to change my attitude. When you're talking the country on a whole,
mm-hmm.
we would have seen, let's take for instance, we would have been oppressed by the colonial masters. Regardless of where we now live, we would have been taken from the motherland, Africa. And a return to Africa to me is not going back, it's going forward, it's going home, which all of us are entitled to. And so whether or not one choose to remain in these captured lands or you choose to go home, then you should have that right. Now, we as blacks, history would recall that black people were here in these islands before slavery. We have traveled this world and traded in many areas long before Columbus was a baby, before he was born. And so Columbus himself, the he didn't just come up with some kind of foolish idea. He was a little boy, sat around the dock and heard the stories of the great seamen and realized and listened to them talk about these lands in the West. And such, most of us would know the history. But the people who really occupy these territory, the indigenous people, the Taínos and the Kalinagos, we would have called the Caribs, and the Taínos we would have called the Arawaks, based on the European history. Now, after that, after emancipation, a lot of that we mixed physically, intimately, and so you find a mixture of races. Some of us would have different shades and shape, but let's not forget the Ethiopian is of many shades. The black race is the only race that can produce children with blonde hair and blue eyes. Only the black race. So they all came out of us. And so what we've seen reproducing today, we still see once there's one drop of black, once there's one drop of melanin, that is dominant. And us being having dominant genes is no really secret in science. We could see why so many issues we have in just trying to survive as a people. And so we can claim our rights because we were forcibly removed from Africa and brought to these lands and labored really for nothing. And then even after emancipation, where the planters would have been compensated, we the people were left not compensated and landless. And so we claim reparations for that. And the latest development now is that the indigenous people should be included in CARICOM's claim for reparations. And so we would have seen, again, a mindset to be more inclusive, but it is by no accident that the black man has his rights here. Who would have given all these plantation owners the deed? Who they bought it from? They basically came in and capture and plunder. So they do not have any real rights to these lands. Now, we might say there's no such thing as true liberation. A person can truly and perfectly liberate themselves mentally. Because of the system that we are living under, we may not be able to liberate ourselves economically. Now, even though we're in a global environment and we may have to depend on other people and other countries, I mean, these political arrangements and economic relationships, these are common in doing business, in surviving. Not because I do business with you, that doesn't mean I am turning over my whole liberty to you. I still remain an independent person. I have a say in what happened. I don't just say, okay, I want your money, so you come in and do what you want in my country. No. And so even though we I've looked at interracial relationships, and we sometimes question, well, when we pay reparations, who is paying who and who is benefiting from who? Not because we have blacks marrying white, that does not mean that the black is not entitled to the reparation. I guess you're gonna end up sharing it with some of the grandchildren of the white man too. But that's the dynamics we're in. But liberation is really the step that we need to see ourselves in, especially as small islands. We keep holding on to Europeans, and we keep making the excuse we are not big enough, we are not economically strong enough. But what are we doing to become big enough and strong enough? I think the opportunity is there within the African Union, well, the diaspora as the sixth region. I mean, if you're talking joining with forces with like Africa, I mean, we have to recognize the strength that we have when we are together as a unit. And that is what we need to do, how we need to approach this whole thing, especially these small island states.
Let's look at Africa, because we're talking about African liberation, and I appreciate, and you quite correctly have pointed out, that Africa is more than the continent of Africa. You have, of course, I think 53 or 54 countries in Africa, but you also have the diaspora. In Brazil, for example, they have a significant African population in Brazil. I think Brazil was the recipient of the most enslaved people anywhere else in the world. So you have large, if I can use the word black populations across the United States, across South and Latin America, across the Caribbean, etc. And all of them are part of what is referred to as the sixth region, which you have alluded to. But for those who want to look at this issue in the round and who look at Africa and look at some of the difficulties that Africa itself is having, difficulties associated with having most of the world's minerals, most of the world's natural resources, but still most of the world's poverty and suffering. African governments, which have repeatedly over the years been charged with corruption and siphoning off the resources of their countries for themselves and their families, buying villas in France and expensive Ferraris and that kind of thing. Leadership that has consistently partnered with the very people that you speak of, the Europeans, to exploit those resources. And we see in countries, resource-rich countries, of young people being out there laboring for minimum and below minimum wage, the suffering that even these rich countries, where one would expect that the resources are so vast that everybody in those countries should be living well. How do you square that when you say to us in the Caribbean, those of us here in St. Kitts and Nevis, those in the diaspora, that we must look to Africa as the model? Now, let me make it clear, because sometimes we can be misconstrued when we have these conversations, that this is for purposes of discussion, because I share the view that we should cleave to Africa. But I'm asking you the question, how do you respond to the critics who say, well, Africa in worship and St. Kitts and Nevis, so what you want me to go Africa for? What you want me to cleave to Africa for? Right? Because Africa, the Europeans came to Africa and enslaved African people, they're still there. In addition, now they have the Chinese who have come and were gobbling up vast tracts of land and resources in Africa. So they've moved from one colonial power, if you will, to another colonial power. What is the problem in Africa why African leadership cannot rise up and recognize that there's value in being African, and that the African Union that you mentioned has tremendous power, having control of most of the earth's natural resources? So when you come on a program like this, AROSS, and you say, this is the path that we ought to take, how do you respond to the skeptic out there who say, well, you give me a basket to carry water in, because you want to send me to a place where I'll be worse off, not better off, based on all that I'm seeing? You want to send me to a place, you're here in Nevis talking about African liberation, but on the continent, Africans don't seem to want to be liberated, because they keep doing the same thing over and over, going from one colonial power to another, one set of exploitation to another. I saw a photo the other day of the leadership, the current leadership across Africa. Very few of them were below 70 years old. They call them the old men of Africa, because they get in there in 40 years, they don't want to leave. So all the tenets that we have talking about liberation, it almost seems that we are making more noise about it from the outside than Africa itself is making from the inside. I will end with this point. When I was foreign minister, the Dominican Republic, through their judiciary, took a decision, the result of which would have made some generations of Haitians stateless. When I say Haitians, I mean people of Haitian descent who were born in the Dominican Republic. As we know, the Dominican Republic and Haiti share an island, Hispaniola. But they've had conflict between these two countries for a very long time. And that decision was a dagger in the heart of Haitians, rendered many of them stateless. I recall Rasai being in a meeting And I recall in particular my brother Camilo Gonzalez from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Passionate, one of the best orators I think in our region. And he made a passionate condemnation of the Dominican Republic and this decision that had been arrived at, which was seen as discriminatory against the Haitian people. And as they went around the room, Caribbean ministers all spoke out. But the Haitian minister was there, he said not a word. And I said I found it strange. Here is the rest of CARICOM making a whole heap of noise about the DR and the decision of the DR against our brothers and sisters in Haiti. Here's the Haitian foreign minister, him not say one word. And after I started to delve further into the dynamics, I realized, boy, their relationships, and then their relationships, and then inside that their relationships. Right?
Yep.
So I ask the question because I think that is sometimes the difficulty. Many of our people, for example, when I was trying to negotiate visa waiver arrangements with African countries, I had people contact me and say, why nobody want to go in place there? Why you not get visa free to Canada and America? There we want to go. You come tell us about Burkina Faso and Togo and Sao Tome and Principe and Senegal. We don't want to hear about them place there. How do you deal with that? Because that, I'm sure you face it as well. I'm not speaking something that is, so how do you address that?
I think it was Marcus Garvey that said, Africa awaits its creators. And I used to wonder what that really meant. Africa awaits its creators. And His Majesty spoke about it. And he said, until the whole of Africa is free, none of us as Africans are free, whether in the continent or in the homeland. So it basically tells us that their fight are our fight. But what that earlier statement showed me was how much Africa needs our help. Because what we have to realize is when they went into Africa, they took out the best. They took the best out of Africa. And so Africa was left with a few generations to so-called catch up. Millions of people were taken out of Africa, They didn't meet us running around in trees. They raided universities. They raided hospitals. They took the best out of Africa. And so no doubt Africa would have been left in that kind of state. It was really after 1885 at the Berlin Conference when Africa became divided. Because there were no borders, no boundaries. It was one landmass. Until the colonial powers decided, let's take this Africa and divide it like a cake. Germany get this, England, Britain get that. And that's what happened to Africa. And of course, these great colonial powers, we would have seen over the history of African leaders, even over the past 20 years, see how many of them have died of questionable circumstances, assassinations, being poisoned here, being poisoned there. And when you check out the history, the majority of them are what we call leaders who stood up against the colonial powers. I mean, as you were talking about, so it's not that Africans are being quiet. What I see in Africa is what I see here in the Caribbean, here in the islands. I see the Chinese moving in, just like how they're moving in Africa, taking over our places in these small islands. I see different races and cultures coming in and paying heavy influences on our people and our culture. I've seen islands in this country, in this region, who are, let's take Nevis for example. I'm not sure of the percentage of African people who are here, yet we are teaching Mandarin in school and no African language. And so it is not that something is so wrong with Africa and not us. What it is the damage that the colonial colonization would have caused to us. It is that repair that needs to be done, the attention that needs to be given to that level of repair, because you're talking 400 years. 400 years is not just going to change just like that. There are a few of us who were able to attain certain levels of consciousness and thus keep the fight going. But Africa needs us. Many of us here in the West have been exposed to certain levels of things that we need to go home and share. And so, even though you might find all these things about Africa, we have had situations, we've got brethren who have repatriated, who've been sending us sad stories and videos. But you know, at the end of the day, every major country and nation in this world today is fighting for peace of Africa. Today, every single one. But yet, their duty, their focus is to keep us distracted away from Africa. Because, you know, really and truly, we can go into Africa and say, listen, we ain't want a reparation, we ain't want nothing from you. Just leave. Because Africa has so much within it today that the little pittance that reparation is going to give to Africa is nothing. If we are able to manage our own resources within Africa, the rise of that powerful nation again will see itself just now.
So it gets me back to, and as you're speaking, you know, in my mind I'm thinking, well, why do you think that Africa itself and those of us in the diaspora have not been able to respond to what the blueprint that you have laid out just now? It seems obvious. It seems obvious that if Africa collectively has what, 1 billion people, it has most of the global mineral and natural resources. You talk about tourism, Africa is a beautiful country for that. You talk about, you know, gold, oil, cobalt, whatever you want to say, Africa has it all. And yet with the human resource, the physical resource, the natural resources, the beauty, the blessings from the Almighty that have been bestowed on Africa, the one thing it appears that they have lacked is the leadership to take that continent and those countries on that continent to where we all feel they should be. So it is one thing, and I listen, and you know, I am perhaps, this is me talking now in terms of my own personal view. I am perhaps unlike some people because there's a sentiment which runs throughout some of the debate and the discussions about blaming somebody. And I have often tried to shake that off and say, listen, things have happened to all of us in our lives. Things have happened to our parents, our grandparents, our ancestors in their lives. Should we allow those things to define us? Or should we instead seek to define our own path and to take responsibility for our own actions? Too often, that's I hear the cry, colonialism is why we do this, and colonialism is why we do that, and colonialism is why. And so it's almost a situation where we're saying Africa is the way it is, the Caribbean and the diaspora are the way they are because we have this legacy of colonialism.
And that'll be correct.
But yet you have all of these people, the best and the brightest that the world has created, who are from this very region. So they have not been able to rise above that and say, listen, this is the path that we are going to.
But who educate them? They've been educated by the colonial masters. They've been taught by the colonial masters. They read the same history, they take the same medicine, they eat the same food. So the colonial master is still in control of them. And that is what is happening. Now, of course, colonialism must be blamed because what it has done to our people, just your psyche, You put a black doll in front of a child and a white doll in front of a child, and you'll be amazed to see how many of them choose the white doll because of their perception as to what is better.
Sure.
This seems to be something now in our DNA. This is going to take a revolution to get it out. Now, when we have leaders like Mark Brantley, who would have the responsibility to say, listen, CARICOM, we must support the African nation because England, America have the economic power, and this is what is happening. The economic power determines what happens. And so when we sit at our round table, because remember when His Majesty went to the League of Nations, in 1935, pleading to the League of Nations because of what Mussolini was doing. Italy was invading. The League of Nations know it was wrong. They were breaking all the rules, and they sat back and watched Italy. And so even though we might have all these rights and wrongs and people who UN and the people supposed to make these decisions, we see is the economic power sometimes that changes it. What we are saying, a lot of our leaders in Africa today are standing up. A lot of things are happening, but what we must remember is significant changes doesn't always come from political leadership. The will of the people is what going to make that change.
Well, I'm happy you said the will of the people, and I agree with you, because the will of the people drives change, and even our leaders emanate from our people. But you talk about the white doll, black doll, and I think that resonates with me, because I agree with you. You have this phenomenon of bleaching, for example, which in places like Jamaica, where black people are actively using chemicals to try and lighten or whiten their skin. And that has to come from a place of deep resentment, that you would say, I am too dark and so I would want to be lighter. I don't know if you remember a song that Buju Banton had done about browning.
I love you, browning.
Yeah.
He got licks, he had to come back and say he loved the black woman.
He got licks and he came back, he didn't stop crying for all black woman. But the reality is that browning phenomenon, right? And that has been part of that colonial legacy. I agree with that. But I'm saying that it's almost as if we do something and we say, boy, yeah, this is how we do it, but we do it because this is the colonial legacy. And not enough responsibility is taken. So somebody who takes up that cream to put on the skin to make the skin lighter or whiter, they do it, and then you and I as commentators say, see, that's the colonial legacy. But that individual took a decision. They went down to the market, they buy the cream, and they put the cream on the skin.
You said, Mr. Bailey.
So you're saying that individual just said, why no, it's the system and the colonial legacy that caused all of this. You have even gone so far to say it's almost as if it's in our DNA. So that means it's imprinted now in us in a way.
We have to upgrade it now. Mr. Bailey, if you train you have a lovely white Alsatian up there. If you train that Alsatian to bite anybody who come to that gate, and then a day when a loved one come by, that Alsatian bites that person. It is the training that that dog would have received. The situation may have changed because you have somebody else there who probably shouldn't be bitten, but the dog has been conditioned to bite. And so a lot of us today walk down the road and would still pull the door for a white man, feeling it's our responsibility to do so. I've pulled chairs for white people. I'm in the hospitality industry, but I pull it for black people too. That is my responsibility to do it on the job. But in a different situation like that, there are a lot of us that actually feel like we should get up and allow them to sit. People still with that mentality. What I'm saying is, it's not that we will sit down and say, hey, we're just going to wait for reparations. We ain't doing nothing. They owe us, they got us so. That's not what we're saying. We are saying that needs to change. We need to now take African Liberation Day at what it means for us today. What should we do as a people? It would mean allowing our children to go to school with dreadlocks, allowing our children to go to school with an afro, respecting our cultural heritage. It would mean respecting ital food and all these different liberty. What it would mean significantly is that we must change the education. The way we educate our children, we are not educating for change. They are going to the same colleges for the past 50, 60 years. The syllabuses regurgitate the same thing. Look at UWI. CARICOM is talking about reparation, and you can't find one African language in UWI. So how are we preparing our people for reparation and repatriation? These are the levels. If you keep teaching our children that they are descendants of slaves, I don't care how many years of college, they're going to come back with that mentality, because that is the highest they can reach, the descendant of a slave. But if they are ever taught that really and truly they come from the lineage of kings and queens who were captured and made into slaves, it will be a different mindset. We cannot expect much change when we haven't changed the critical things. Education is key. Our children are not exposed to the truth. And so for all it, and the white man said it. He said we could take the chains off. If anyone listen, research Willie Lynch, how to make a slave. When you done make a slave, you take off the chain and you control that slave for generations. That is what is happening to us today. We need a revolution in mindset. That is what will, and when you see that mindset, you have a different type of leader coming out of the region. You have the Marcus Garvey them again, and the Walter Rodney them again, and the Malcolm X and the Martin Luther King. These are the kind of revolutionary leaders that we will recreate when we change that education system. And then of course, taking over Africa will become so easy.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to On The Mark. We have with us Ras Iroy, who has come to tell us a bit about African Liberation Day that is happening tomorrow. Iroy, we have 10 minutes left with you, because we said we'll give you the first half of the show. And the thing about conversations is that the time flies by pretty quickly. There is, you said, an event on Sunday. Is it an event that's open to the public?
Yes. Unfortunately, I think quite a number of people would have been looking for an African Liberation Day rally tomorrow in Nevis. Unfortunately, we had to cancel. We had some serious setbacks. What we are doing is on Sunday, which would be our sort of wrapping up of our celebrations. We're having our brethren and sisters come over from St. Kitts, and we're having what we call a groundation. We're going to be doing the ceremonial fire, drumming and chanting, and we're going to be focusing a lot more on the African liberation and the whole message, seeing that we didn't get to have a rally. And what is happening on Saturday, we from Nevis, we are going over to join our counterparts in the Independence Square. Of course, that annual rally that we normally attend. Next week, however, we would be distributing our food hamper to the community, something we do on an annual basis, going into all the parishes and distributing food to the general public. So basically, our celebrations this year are very much limited, but Sunday is going to be a grand occasion. The general public is invited. We're starting at sunset, that's just around 6. We'll be having food, we'll be having drinks, we'll be having our sacrament, of course. We would be lighting the Nyabingi fire, and that itself is a good ceremony to see. And of course, the Nyabingi drumming and chanting. General discussion on the whole African Liberation Day and the whole message to I and I as a people. So to my people, you know, it's always good to be here.
Where's the event going to be?
The event is going to be at Natural Liberty. That's opposite the Newcastle Pottery. It's going to start at 2 in the afternoon, basically with music and African games and so on. And then the actual lighting of the fire ceremony would start at sunset. So that's this coming Sunday.
We have about 7 or 8 minutes left. Before you leave, I can't let you go without getting your perspective on this whole issue of the monarchy and King Charles III being our head of state. There's a huge debate going on in Jamaica at this point. Our own Prime Minister, Dr. Drew, has said that it will be a matter for the people. You have a perspective on that? What is your sense on that?
When was he here? When did he last visit?
He visited, I believe it was just before COVID, if memory serves. It would have been 2019. I believe so, yes.
I stood at the top of the dock and I held my placard. And the placard said, King Charles. No, I didn't say this. He just said Charles. He said, okay. Charles. I said, tell your mother, tell mommy to pay reparations now. And it had some other little things on it. And I know he read it. We made eye contact, he read it and gave the thumbs up.
He gave you a thumbs up?
He gave the thumbs up. Okay. I think that some of the British bodyguards, I think they probably wanted to arrest me though, but he took it with a smile. I know he read it. Just saying all of that to say, my position is clear. For me, I come from an ancient monarchy as a people, as an African people. It is ridiculous for us as a people to still hold fast to a monarchy, which is the monarchy that enslaved us, that colonized us, that took us through all these years of rape, and up until now still haven't looked over the shoulder and say, here is some payback. I think in 2023, for us as independent states, as we call it, to still be holding on to that monarchy, I don't care what, if it's just some symbolic whatever. We need to move away from that. Now, that in itself would show exactly how liberated we are. Because until we make moves like that, I mean, it's not a matter of whether I like you or not. It's basically saying, hey, this is not colonial times. I'm an African man. My roots do not go back within your lineage. I cannot have that kind of respect. As far as I'm concerned, we still bowing to them because we still see them as king. And that is a big problem. For me, my king is Haile Selassie. That's how really how I see it. You know, I really don't think. I think as Caribbean leaders, we need to move fast. You know, there are a lot of implications. Yes, again, what did Kwame Nkrumah say? The bonds of unity that exists among us is stronger and better than all the things that supposedly divide us. Coming together, we can overcome all these tasks. We won't have to be doing it alone and feel like we fighting against the monarchy alone. It is simply saying, hey, time is up. You know what it is to pledge allegiance to King Charles? Years and successors. I mean, we talk everlasting. There's no ending. I cannot support that.
Good. So your position then is definitely that we need to move away.
Have to move away
from the monarchy.
Have to.
And what would you replace that with? Do you have a perspective on that?
We have to be something.
Well, I'm just asking. If the answer is nothing, well, that's the answer. But
we need to find something that defines us.
Right.
We have to stop allowing European categories to define who we are and where we stand. We define something that works well for us as a nation, and we set our standards by that. We don't need to be judged by some colonial yardstick.
Are you concerned at all? We have about 3-4 minutes left. Are you concerned at all that the debate about the monarchy that we are seeing unfolding right close to us in Jamaica and other places, Barbados had a similar discussion, that it is being conflated with the issue of reparations, and as a consequence probably taking away some of the center stage, if you will, the focus from the reparations issue? And I ask that question because I see one as being far more important than the other. I see one as symbolic. The monarchy I see as symbolism. The reparations I see as real, meaning that is where the rubber meets the road. That is where you can bring relief to people, whether through education, opportunity, money, whatever it may be. But you can bring actual relief to people who, as you pointed out, whereas the slave owners were compensated, the slaves got nothing. I see a danger. That's why I asked the question, because I find when the narrative now, it seems that the two issues are being merged in a way, instead of keeping them separate and distinct, so that the reparations issue doesn't lose any of its the noise around it. You know, the center stage, as I put it, and the focus on it. What do you think of that?
Education. You need to educate the people as to what it is and how it is. But you see, when you examine the 10-point plan of CARICOM, reparation in itself would address this issue of the monarchy, because you're talking about even changing names of your streets and your buildings. All of these things are embedded in reparation, and so moving away from the monarchy is all. I can't remember exactly which point it would come under, but it is definitely embedded in the 10-point plan of the CARICOM reparation movement, which of course is also, you know, up for some review as well. But definitely, I don't see it overshadowing each other. I think they should focus more on the reparations, as you quietly say, because reparations, when it is properly taught and understood, the whole issue of the monarchy and all of that would basically, as you say, would fall in line, and it would happen. Instead of just saying, hey, let's just get rid of the monarchy, and then what? And for what? You know, what follows. So I agree, reparations should be the thrust for us right now within the region. You know, schools, universities, governments, yeah, we all need to focus in on the whole reparation movement.
All right, final word from you.
I want to just wish everyone a blessed African Liberation Day. Let's do something wonderful tomorrow. Let's all come out either in our independence wear or our African attire. Find something kinte, something colorful, something that represents you in terms of your attire. Again, I just want you to say, you know, give thanks to the general public, continue supporting the One Love Rastafari movement. And I'm looking forward to seeing you on Sunday at Natural Liberty. One Black Love.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that was Ras Iroy, who came to talk to us about liberation, and we had a discussion, covered a range of topics, but as I said at the top of the show, we had a lot to cover today. I could continue talking to him for at least another hour or more, because the perspectives are always refreshing, and it is always good to get the perspectives of a broad cross-section of our community on these matters. I didn't open the lines because the time was short, and certainly I hope that people will go out and support the event on Sunday. That is the event at just across from the Pottery there in the Newcastle area, and I have been to various events there, and I can tell you that you will enjoy it. And he said that the sacrament will be there on offer. I didn't ask him what that meant, but I'm pretty sure that persons will go there and enjoy the food, the camaraderie, and most importantly, to learn something. So Rasaya, thank you very much. All right, so we are, of course, going now into the second half of the show. Let me take this opportunity to congratulate my alma mater, the Ivor Walters Primary School. I'm told that they were the winners today of the STEM competition that was held. I really want to commend the Honorable Troy Liebert, our Minister of Education, and his entire team, his permanent secretary, his principal education officer, and the team, the teachers, all the officials who continue, I believe, to do amazing things in education on the island of Nevis. They have seen the need that we have all been aware of for some time, because there's been a real deficiency in terms of science, math, engineering, and they have stepped up in a very real way in technology, science, technology, engineering, and math. I think that's what STEM means, and they've stepped up in a meaningful way, partnering with the government of the Republic of China, Taiwan. I would want to go on record again to thank our brothers and sisters from Taiwan, who continue to really be rock solid partners in terms of our development. And so I would want to commend them because they've come up with this idea of putting on a whole week of activities for STEM, and I'm told that there's great excitement. The youngsters are getting involved in interesting ways to make it something that is very powerful, something that they would enjoy, something that is not perceived in any way, shape or form as being hard or too difficult, but fun. And of course, everything we do in life involves math, it involves technology, it involves science. Things have got so bad on the island of Nevis that we have been forced to even try to go outside to try and find math teachers, try and find teachers for the various science subjects, physics, chemistry, etc. Because, I mean, since my time, and I can't any longer consider myself a youngster, so since my time, you always had the word that boy, math and chemistry and physics and things, them they hard. And so a lot of times we were I wouldn't say encouraged, but we ended up doing subjects that were perceived to be easier. And that wasn't helped because we were all pursuing ones, and the number of subjects you can get a 1 in or an A in meant that you were a better student. You were student of the year, you were the best student, as the case may be, and so you shied away from anything that was perceived to be difficult. I know that some people were doing some subjects simply because the talk was that that's an easy one, and so you gravitated to those. And frankly, we have seen it continue. As a government, we've had to take a decision as cabinet that we would not seek to support financially certain subject areas. Why? Because we had dozens and dozens of our youngsters going off to do business management, marketing, finance, these types of areas. And when you spoke to them and said, why you do business management, business administration, and the response, oh, them easy. That was the perception. I'm not saying that's the reality, but the perception was that. And then you say to people, why don't you do, biotechnology, or why don't you do physics or chemistry or applied mathematics, pure mathematics? No. Then they're too hard. And so you have a real sense that people shy away from some of these areas. So I really welcome the fact that the minister and his team have gone down this road. I think it is a welcomed initiative for the island of Nevis. And he did promise that he would, when the phones open, call in to give a report. And so we certainly look forward to that and to move forward accordingly in that regard. Last week, I reported that we had commissioned our brand new mammogram machine at our hospital here. And, I wanted to make the case because somebody sent me some really silly position that the opposition keeps taking. They keep talking about the hospital not finished, the hospital not finished, and that is absolutely true. The expansion of the hospital is not finished. That is a project that is an ongoing project. Yes, it has taken some time, and we've explained time and time again why that is. But the piece that I saw today went on to say how we don't care about people's health and all that. And I just want the public to understand that the care that is available at Alexandra Hospital has in no way, shape or form been reduced or diminished or is any less because another building that we're working on is not finished. I want to make that pellucid because some seem to be perpetuating the myth that until the new wing of the hospital is finished, the healthcare system in Nevis somehow is at a standstill. That is not the case. At that Alexandria Hospital, I am so proud of the fact that we have introduced a CT scan machine that I'm told is only the second in the OACS region. That it is now in full operation. That we are in the process, in fact, has signed off on it to hire a radiologist, resident radiologist. Where we ever before hear them things happening in Nevis? We now have a state-of-the-art mammogram machine. And not only do we have the machine, we have commissioned it, and we are saying to women on the island of Nevis as we tackle head-on breast cancer, that for the rest of this year, that is for the rest of May, all of June, July, August, September, October, November, and December, 7+ months, that your mammogram will be free. FREE, free. Why are we doing that? We're doing that because we want to encourage as many women as possible to go and do a mammogram and know their status. We are told by the experts that the mammogram is one of the more effective ways of detecting breast cancer at an early stage. We are also told that if breast cancer is detected early, it can be treated far more successfully than when it is detected late in the day. These are initiatives that we are taking and continue to take. We've invested in ambulances, we've invested in ventilators, brand new machinery, state-of-the-art machinery. We've invested in nurses, we've invested in doctors. And so when I hear people continually trying to bring down the health system, all on some spurious allegation that a building that is being constructed is not yet finished, I want to make it pellucid that that is abject rubbish, abject nonsense. The health system in Nevis is stronger now than it has ever been. It is stronger now in terms of equipment and personnel than it has ever been. And I challenge anyone out there to call and tell me that it is not so. We have responded and we keep responding. We are modernizing. And what we're trying to do with the new wing is really to create the further step forward in terms of that modernization. But let it not be suggested that our healthcare is in any way suffering as a result of that building not yet being completed. That is like saying a family is building a new home and therefore the old home that they have is now leaking. That is not the case. The old home continues to work, to provide shelter, but they look forward to moving into the new home when it is finished. And I want to make that point because I find that there's far too many attempts at misleading our people, when to my mind it is not necessary. You have a difficulty that the hospital project has been delayed? Absolutely. Talk about that. But don't try to suggest that that now means that the health care that is available on the island is somehow substandard, because that is not the case. And the evidence on the ground suggests that that is not the case. We're going to open the lines now and we're going to take calls until 10 o'clock. The lines, the numbers to call are 869-469-1616 and 869-469-1700. Let's go straight to the phones. Good evening, you're on the mark. Hello?
Good evening, Miss Sheriff.
Good evening to you.
And how are you?
I'm well, thank you. Good to hear you.
All right. John 14, verse 1, 2, and 3. Let not your heart be troubled. Ye believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I'll go and prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also. Miss Sheriff, good night. Lord of mercy, all kind of problem with hospital. You left everything to God now, but whatever you do, you satisfy yourself. You understand you can do more than you share. Anyhow, good night, and I love you.
All right, love you too, and thank you as always for the scripture. Thank you so much. We're taking your calls, ladies and gentlemen, 869-469-1616 and 869-469-1700. Let's go back to the phones. Good evening, you're on the mark.
Good evening to me, Brantley. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Good evening to you.
Wonderful. I realize calling in on the mark is an act, because I decided to call in as soon as I heard you say that you're opening the lines, and I realized that the lady who called in to give the scripture she knows the art much better than me. So
Yeah, well, she has been doing it a lot longer, that's all.
definitely, and it's people like those who make the show such a great show. Always calling in to share that inspiration and so on. So, Brantley, I've been listening to the show all night. This is Troy Libert, and you're doing a wonderful job on the show. I was listening to my good brother Iroy earlier also, and so the first half of the show was wonderful. I also want to echo what you said about our healthcare system. Our healthcare system in Nevis is certainly in better shape now than it has been at any other time. So even though there are some persons who would want to focus on the fact that the mammoth undertaking that we're doing there at the Alexandra Hospital is not complete yet, we have had many other successes in the meantime. You would have mentioned the CT scan, and the CT scan, of course, is a really, really big deal for us here in Nevis. It is a giant leap forward for healthcare here in the Federation, and certainly here in Nevis. It would allow the doctors and so on to do diagnosis in a way that before they couldn't do it. And so that's a giant step forward for our people here in Nevis. And then just recently, the introduction of the mammogram, and the cabinet has gone ahead and has said that for the first 6 months, at least from now until the end of 2023, the mammogram is free. So all of the women of Nevis can go in and get checked for breast cancer, get screened for breast cancer, because the earlier you catch cancer, it's the better that it's going to be for you. You have more hope, if cancer is caught early, rather than living with it for a really, really long time and not going to get checked and so on. So the government continues to work. The Ministry of Health, all of the ministries around the government continue to work. Premier Brantley, and of course, the cabinet follows your capable leadership, and we all have that confidence in you. And the people of Nevis have demonstrated that confidence in the Concerned Citizens Movement, and they demonstrated that confidence in you as a leader for the people of Nevis. And at this point in time, we don't see an alternative. You don't see an alternative coming from the other side that is even on the same level. What we see over there is, just a lot of confusion and so on. And so we want to ask people to, remain focused on what is important, and what is important is certainly moving Nevis forward, continuing to take the small steps that it takes to take us forward as an island. Premier, I wanted to call in and make mention of the STEM week.
Before you go on, Minister, because I too want to hear about the STEM week, but as you're talking, I pulled up some data on my phone, and I don't believe the public would understand that in this little Nevis here, you know how many doctors are employed to the government? 25.
Wow.
25. Among them, we have surgeons, 2 surgeons, 2 pediatricians, 1 internist, 1 anesthesiologist, 1 orthopedic surgeon, 1 obstetrics and gynecology, 1 internist cardiologist, and we have several medical officers. 25. And we are currently employing a radiologist, a specialist who's due to arrive shortly, and another surgeon who we hope to have shortly. So, when I hear the chatter, sometimes I really wonder if it is that people are not paying attention. Someone said to me that they had a relative here who visited from overseas, from Nevis, but lives overseas. And that relative said that he was amazed because he continues to listen to the other side on the island talk about nothing is happening on Nevis. And he said he drove around for himself. Because if you have eyes to see, in fact, even if you are visually impaired, you can still see the progress in Nevis. But yet, you have some who insist nothing is happening. But he said he drove around himself because he wanted to see for himself and make up his own mind as to whether or not, in his view, Nevis was moving forward. And he commented on the roads, he commented on the quality of housing, government and private. He commented on the jobs and the availability of jobs and the new businesses that have been opening up. The Malcolm Gishard Park, you know, the water taxi facility, the hospital, the ongoing construction of the hospital, the engagement in terms of health care, equipment, new doctors, more nurses. We have nurses now, Minister Liebert, from all around the world. Jamaica, St. Vincent, Philippines, and we continue to support financially our own students going off to do nursing. So the person made the point that people are living, it seems, in a parallel universe, because it is raining outside. You and I can see that it is raining, and yet they're telling people that there's no rain, that the place is dry.
And we could feel the rain too.
You feel it, you see it, you smell it. And they're telling people there's no rain, and so people are saying, but this is an alternate universe. Because how could you see all the movements and developments and yet continue with this mantra of nothing is happening? And so I was pleased to hear it, because the gentleman was saying basically he didn't want no politician to tell him, he wanted to see for himself. And having come and driven around the island, he said he can't believe that this is Nevis, that they say nothing is happening. So I think that narrative really needs to be corrected. And the fact that we have 25 doctors employed between the district and Alexandra Hospital, I think is quite impressive.
I am not so young, but I still count myself as among the youngish people. And I can recall when we had 2 or 3 doctors in Nevis.
Of course, the whole of Nevis.
That was all that we had in terms of doctors. And we knew the names of all of the doctors. I can't tell you who all of the doctors are in Nevis right now. We have so many doctors. And that is testament to the amount of progress that we have had here in Nevis. And a lot of it has been supported by government, because, you know, government has been assisting young people over the years in going off to study in various disciplines. And so government has had a significant role to play. And we, of course, have been developing our healthcare apparatus here on the island of Nevis. Everything is being developed. Healthcare is being developed. Education is being developed. Agriculture is being developed. The physical plans of the island is being developed. Because people are talking about the hospital. But the hospital that is being built in New Wing is 2.5 times the size of the existing hospital. And when it is complete, it will be a giant leap forward for the people of Nevis. So, I mean, sometimes when we hear the naysayers talking, we have to really look at them and take it for what it is. The reason why they are talking is perhaps because they believe that it is not happening for them in the way that they want it. They're not thinking about the people of Nevis or development for Nevis as a whole. They said they see development, you know, just as a personal thing.
Once they're not getting,
Exactly.
I believe that you're absolutely correct. Well, tell us a bit about the STEM week now, 'cause I think that's how people are very interested.
This week, the Department of Education, the Ministry of Education, is having what we're calling STEM week. It's the first time in St. Kitts and Nevis, certainly the first time in Nevis, that we have done anything like this. We had the launch of the STEM week on Monday. I was able to go and give some remarks at the launch of the STEM week. And today, at the Malcolm Gishard Park, you know, such a beautiful facility, we had the first ever STEM challenge. In the morning, we had the STEM challenge for our primary schools, and I want to say congratulations to the Ivor Walters Primary School. They came out as the top school. So Ivor Walters Primary, Mr. Premier, I know that is your school. They are the winners of the first ever STEM challenge here on Nevis. The St. Thomas's Primary School would have placed second, and the Maud Cross Preparatory School was third. So we had Ivor Walters coming out on top. And the STEM challenge, Mr. Premier, was it's something different. The students were given some timed projects to do. In some cases, they had to do experiments. In some cases, they were asked to make a specific thing happen in a specific order. Science projects, they were asked to solve mathematical problems, and they were given a specific amount of time within which to solve those mathematical problems. So it was all about making science and technology stuff fun for our students. That is what STEM is all about. STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. And what we are doing is trying to make those things a little bit more palatable for our students. Normally when they're teaching the math and the science in class, they could be a bit abstract. So the whole thrust of STEM is to teach math and science and engineering and so on in a way that students can relate them to real world situations and real world issues. That's where they would get to digest it a bit better. In the afternoon, this afternoon, we had the STEM challenge for the high schools or the secondary schools. And of course, we have 3 secondary schools here at Nevis, the 2 public secondary schools, Charlestown Secondary School, the Gingerland Secondary School, and then we have the Nevis International Secondary School. And that is the order in which they played. Charlestown was first, Gingerland was second, by 1 point, I am told, and then we had the Nevis International Secondary School. So the secondary school students would have gone out and done their science projects and so on, and their math projects in the same way as the primary schoolers did in the morning. There were timed questions and timed projects that they had to complete. Charlestown Secondary would have come out on top, and I want to say kudos to them. And of course, on Friday we are going to have the big STEM Expo right there at the Malcolm Gishard Recreation Park, and it's going to be an all-day affair. And I'm hoping that persons who have some time, that you can come to the Malcolm Gishard Recreation Park on Friday and view some of what the students have been doing in the way of STEM. We're going to have some robotics, we're going to have some experiments, we're going to have some, different stations showing different things related to science and technology and so on. And so it's all about making science and technology interesting for our young people. Mr. Premier, all of us know that the world that we live in today is a technology-driven world. The latest thing that they're going into now is artificial intelligence. That's computer and computer programs that can actually think. And that is how far technology has gone. And for us in Nevis to be on the cusp of what's happening in the world, for us in Nevis to remain relevant, we have to ensure that our young people who are coming up, that they are computer literate and that they are technology natives. And so that is where the Department of Education is going with the thrust towards STEM.
Well, thank you very much. I don't think you're going to get any argument from me or from right-thinking members of the public that this is indeed a phenomenal development, taking some leadership in the Federation as well on this matter, and we certainly look forward to the results from this and to more of our young people getting involved with science and technology. As you mentioned, artificial intelligence, that is an area that is here, is not going to go away, and so our people need to get on board. That is the way of the world, and if we get out and we get out early, we therefore have a competitive advantage. So thank you, Minister Liebert. I appreciate it and commend you and the team again. I'm sorry? Okay, I think Minister Liebert has gone. On Friday, they have the expo for STEM, and so we're inviting everyone to come out to see what our young people have come up with, the ideas. It promises to be a fantastic event. Let's go back to the phones right away. We've lost that caller. Caller, please call back 869-469-1616 and 869-469-1700. Let's go straight back and say good evening. You're on the mark. Hello?
Good evening.
Good evening. You're on the mark.
Hi, Mr. Brantley. Good evening. This is Florine Williams.
How are you, my friend?
I know you're waiting for my call, right?
Always.
Okay, this is Florin Williams to the general public. I'm the PRO for the Nevis Renal Society. Please let me promote the walkathon that we'll be having on the 27th of this month, which will be Saturday coming. The fee is $50 per t-shirt, which includes refreshment after the walk. We're going to start walking at 6 a.m., starting from the entrance of the Eva Wilkin Gallery, Main Road. Then we turn right to Market Shop, down to Hanley's Road, and then to the Indian Castle, where we have the fruit orchard. I know it's a different route this year, but we tend to, let people see what's going on down by the fruit orchard. And then, before I go, I would like to encourage the general public to support the Nevis Renal Society. The society can assist clients who are suffering from renal failure or kidney disease. And thanks to everyone who come out and support us in whatever small way. We really do appreciate it. And thanks also to the Bank of Nevis under the management of Everett Martin, that we really appreciate it for that sponsor. And thanks to everyone who really gave generously. Without you, we couldn't have done it on our own. Last but not least, for all the hard-working members, a big thank you. And just to remind everybody, you're going to start 6 o'clock at the entrance of the Eva Wilkin Gallery, and then down to the main road, down to the Fort Archie, down Hanley's Road. And thank you very much, Mr. Brantley, and have a good evening.
Well, before you go, you sent me a message. I didn't respond to it as yet, but if somebody,
I realized that.
yes,
I
apologize. I had quite a bit doing today.
I understand.
But if somebody can come, it would have to be Friday though, because I'm in the Parliament in St. Kitts tomorrow.
Oh, so should I check you at the office?
Yes, you can do that. Just send me a WhatsApp.
Okay, I'll do that to let you know when I'm going to come by then.
Absolutely.
I
Thank
know you haven't forget it, to be honest with you.
No,
you're going to pay your role.
I always try to do my little bit. You know that. All right.
Okay.
Good.
And thank you very much to the general public. Please come out and support us. Everybody looking out for this walkathon, and we're going to have a lot of surprises.
So 6 a.m. we start at Eva Wilkin, you said?
Yeah, Eva Wilkin Gallery on the main road.
Right.
Gallery, the entrance.
The entrance right there, yes, okay. And then you walk and you go all the way down Hanley's Road.
Down Hanley's Road, yeah.
Okay, so that's a downhill walk, most of it.
Downhill walk. And the person may be asking, how am I going to get back up? Guess what? We have a bus going to be transporting people back up.
Back up?
Yeah.
So why you didn't have to walk the other way and make them walk from down the hill, come up?
Lad, it's too much, man. I personally couldn't get that done. We have to think about other persons.
Other persons, all right.
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe you could have done it.
I look forward to seeing you, my friend.
Yeah,
all right.
What happened? Next time we're gonna let you plan that. Okay.
All right. Take good care.
Thank you very much. So I'm gonna send you a WhatsApp on
Yes.
Friday, then, and then from there we move on.
Okay. God bless.
Okay. Thank you. God bless you.
All right. Good.
Okay.
And that is my good friend Florian. She calls every time the Renal Society is having an event, and very important organization doing important work. So I join her in encouraging all to go out and support. Big walkathon this Saturday starting at 6 a.m. right there on the Island Main Road in the vicinity of the gap there to go into Eva Wilkin, and from there all the way down to the Indian Castle Fruit Orchard. Let's go back to the phones. Good evening, you're on the mark.
Good evening, Mr. Premier.
Good evening.
You know, I am so astonished because people keep saying there is nothing happening, especially in the health department. I will not call myself an old man, and I'm not a young man either. But I could remember the days when you had one doctor in Nevis, Dr. Meow. I don't know how many people remember that.
Meow?
Yes, you had surgery being done once a week at the hospital. I don't know where these people memories. I know a lot of people in Nevis is my age. Dr. Mia was stationed right here in Highland. You know where Highland is? You were too young for that.
Highland, you say?
Right there in Fan Hill.
Fan Hill, okay.
Right.
On the hill there?
So, yes, I don't understand why people are, keep criticizing all the time?
Well, and how, what?
We have come such a long way.
Mhm.
And it's like the previous caller said, you have doctors, you can't even call the name. In those days, definitely is only one doctor. It's either Dr. Louisi or Dr. Meow.
Well, you know what is interesting is that I reflect that even when we had the tragedy of the Christina disaster, Dr. Kennedy Simmons, I recall,
Came over from Sinkit?
he had to come over from Sinkit.
Exactly.
So that suggests that we didn't even have doctors resident here, because he recounted that he had to find a way. I think he flew to get over to Nevis that evening, and
Exactly.
we basically were dependent on a doctor coming over from St. Kitts. But
Exactly.
the bottom line is that I am simply making a point that you hear people talking sometimes, and I don't understand. If you say the progress is not fast enough, that is one argument. But if you say there's nothing happening,
And as you say that,
Mhm.
it reminds me of Cleon Stapleton when she came to St. Thomas to campaign. She said plainly, I would not say CCM have not done anything, but they can do better.
well, and that to me would be a more honest statement. But the constant refrain that nothing is happening, and saying to people, when people see, I mean, how could you drive around Nevis and say nothing is happening in Nevis? Be honest. Somebody told me they went down to the Malcolm Gishard Park and they can't believe that such a thing exists on the island, because they felt so comfortable, the surroundings are so incredible, etc. And yet you have people who are using it, people who have their functions there. In fact, I think NRP itself had fundraising functions at the very venue, but they say nothing is happening.
Well, they're promoting their own agenda.
Well, all right. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate the comment. And we're just looking, and I think, and part of the concern I have is that I think that some of the criticisms, I heard this chap, Carlisle Powell, I think it was, who made some comment some time ago about the hospital, which I think was very unfortunate, saying that that's where people go to die or some nonsense like that. I hope I'm not misquoting, but that's what I understood from the comment he made. And I said, but why would you say that? Why would you say that? It's all of us on this island, if we were to get sick. God forbid I were to leave this studio now and something were to happen. Alexandria is where I have to go. I have to depend on the nurses and the doctors who are there. So why do we constantly engage in denigrating them? Because they may feel that they're attacking me. Let me get at Mark Brantley by saying the hospital is this and the hospital is that. But the hard-working people who are there, you're also devaluing them and their hard work. And oftentimes I think that goes missing in terms of when people just want to get up and talk. Just talk for the sake of talk. Come, and as the gentleman said, if it is you say, you can do better. Yes, the MGR Park is there, but you would have done it this way to make it better. It requires this or that or the other. That's a legitimate argument, but don't pretend it doesn't exist. Don't pretend the water taxi doesn't exist or it hasn't revolutionized travel between these islands when every chance you get you're using the same facility, but telling people nothing is happening. It makes no sense. Let's go back to the phones. Good evening, you're on the mark. Hello?
Hi, good evening, Mr. Brantley.
Yes, you're on the mark. I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, this is Fitzroy Warner. I am calling in support of the Renal Society walk. I am asking all of my friends to join me on that walk. I am going to walk the first 3 minutes and then they should be able to take over. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And because the Renal Society, they're really doing a really good job in Nevis, they support us as renal patients every December. Hello?
Yes, I'm listening to you, brother. Go ahead.
We can look forward for a check from them. So I'm asking people to support, And the other thing is, I want to take a little time on the hospital. Mr. Brantley, I have been in hospital all around the world, as you know. And Nevis Hospital is among the best of a lot of them. We have air conditioning in the hospital. I don't know if people realize that. Throughout all of the departments and the wards, most hospitals don't have that. Our hospital, if you go there, even at 1 o'clock in the morning, and you need a blood test, the nurses are trained to get you that blood test in about 10 minutes. Now, that is amazing because some hospitals I have been, you have to wait to as much as 3 days to get back your results. And you can get your result at the emergency at the hospital outpatient in about 10 minutes. So that is amazing. And I just want to say, we have some young doctors up there that does an amazing job. I'm in the hospital almost every month. I am at the outpatient. We have some really good young doctors, almost look like teenagers, but they're doing a really good job, both men and women. And we have some good nurses. So our healthcare system now is really on par with anywhere else. And I can attest to that. Okay?
Well, I'm very grateful for that, and thank you very much. I believe that.
Before I go, thanks to you personally and the Nevis Island administration for assisting us in our renal care. I know you have reached out to many of us personally, and we are I can speak on behalf of all the patients. We are very grateful for that. So once again, thank you, man, and thanks to the Nevis Island administration. P.S. Shalisa Clark, an amazing lady. Good night to you. Have a good evening, sir.
Thank you very much. And that is Fitzroy Warner, well known. So we're grateful for the call, Fitzroy, and thank you for that because, you know, as I said, sometimes the criticisms come fast and furious. The reality, however, is something different. It is 20 minutes to. We're going to take your calls. Let's go right back to the phones. Good evening. You're on the mark.
Good evening, Mr. Premier.
Good evening. Good evening.
How are you doing, sir?
I am well. Always good to hear you.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Well, first and foremost, you had made a comment there, a couple of comments there earlier, and Honorable Troy Libert picked up, and I just wanted to chime in as well because I was amazed at the figures that you provided there earlier on with the number of doctors that we have employed with the government service. And of course you
and more coming. Yeah.
And you also spoke about the health services and what we offer at the Alexander Hospital, and you made an excellent point because irrespective of the fact that the expansion is not complete, it in no way compromise the health system and what we are providing to the people of Nevis. Because Premier Brantley, it's always good when you provide the figures and the statistics and the facts to back up what you're saying. Because these are facts that nobody can deny. And of course, with all of what you said there, with respect to the doctors, with respect to the CT scan, with respect to the mammogram machine and so on, nobody can doubt the fact that our healthcare system is the best, is at its best has ever been. I mean, I go to the hospital pretty often to visit, and of course, whenever I go, I visit all of the patients, and of course, there would be some patients who are not satisfied. But generally, the majority of the patients that I visit when I visit the hospital, they are always saying how good they get cared for at the Alexandra Hospital. And so our healthcare system is delivering well for the people of Nevis. And as you said that, I want anyone anyone to call in, they don't have to call in now, but on any other program, bring the facts and state under which administration and in which year the healthcare system was better than what it is now. I want anyone else to also tell us in what year and under what administration our water system has been better, our electricity has been better and more dependable. Tell us in what year and under what administration our road network has been better than what it is under this current administration. Because as we always say when we speak, we always come with the facts and the figures and the statistics to back up what we're saying. And anyone can challenge us and tell us in what year and under what administration the education system is better. In what year and under what administration our social safety nets here on the island of Nevis have been better than what it is under the system administration. I can talk about social safety nets because I was the previous Minister of Social Development. So I know what we offer from social services. Tell us under what administration and in what year our agriculture sector is better. I had a visit just recently from the regional representative for AICA, Mr. Greg Rollins, and of course he was accompanied by the rep from St. Kitts Nevis, and the regional representative was in full praise and commendation for the island of Nevis. He is the representative for the entire Caribbean region, and he said that Nevis, little Nevis, is leading in the Caribbean with regards to greenhouse technology. I want to repeat that. The Eastern Caribbean States representative for AICA, who visits all the Caribbean islands, said Nevis, little Nevis, is leading the way with regards to greenhouse technology in the Caribbean region. He even mentioned that in the Windward Islands, they have tried so many times with greenhouse and it is not taking off down there. And he's amazed at what is happening here with greenhouse technology on the island of Nevis under this administration. He also said that Nevis is leading in the region as well with regards to what we're doing at the abattoir. He said no other abattoir in the region is doing what ours is doing. He was talking about number of products that we put out at the abattoir and what Little Island is doing. And then people have the audacity to say that nothing is happening in Nevis when we are leading with greenhouse technology. We are leading in terms of our abattoir and our abattoir products. Only when I had a meeting with the PS of Agriculture on Monday, he spoke about what is happening at agro-processing and how our products have found their way to Four Seasons, and we cannot manufacture enough at our agro-processing center for the Four Seasons resort. He spoke about what we receive from Four Seasons in terms of checks. We have never received so much money from Four Seasons for our agro-processed products. So things are happening. So I want anyone to say under what administration and in what year agriculture was better than what it is now. In what year and under what administration? Housing has been better. So in Premier, we can go on and on and on. And the facts are there, staring everybody in their faces, that this little island of Nevis is moving. We are shining, and we are shining brightly. And people who live on this island who see it must stop being so, they must stop being so dangerous, and they must stop lying, because people can see. If people who come from overseas all the time can see what is happening on Nevis, why is it people who live on Nevis cannot see? Why is it? Premier, when I drive on the island's main road now, I don't even feel like I'm in Nevis. I'm serious. I don't even feel like I'm in Nevis now. And so this administration, with the little resources that we have, We have transformed this little beautiful island of Nevis. We have transformed it, and we will continue to transform it. And the people on the island, right-thinking people on the island, know what is happening. And so I just wanted to just touch on that as you spoke about the healthcare sector, and then Troy came and he spoke about the STEM and everything. That we are really, this little island is really leading, and we are going in leaps and bounds.
When you touch so many areas, agriculture, housing, education, roads and infrastructure, electricity, water, and you know, and even in terms of water, you know, the huge hullabaloo the other day because of the water situation. And I told somebody, I said, you know, in a way, I am not disappointed that it happened. I'm actually happy because the people of Nevis have now become so accustomed to water being a regular feature.
Precisely.
That we are out of it for one day and there's a hue and cry. And I say that because we all remember a time when water here was just not available.
Precisely.
And so the fact that we have brought this island to the point where being out of it is the exception, is the aberration, not the norm.
Right.
I believe it's testimony to the work that we have been doing and continue to do.
Precisely. And we have been really working, and as I said, Premier, we know that we've gone through 2 very rough years with the pandemic, and things haven't stopped. Things haven't been at a standstill on the island. We continue to work, and things continue to happen. All right. Anyway, Honorable Premier, I just wanted to touch that, and just wanted to touch a few other little things this evening. This coming Saturday, the 27th of May, I am organizing a white goods cleanup for the people of St. George, Gingerland, my constituency. And of course, I would have done this last year, and there is actually always the need, because when I did it last year, Honorable Premier, we had so much stuff in terms of the white goods cleanup that I thought that when I organized it this year, that there won't be much. But I'm already getting a lot of calls. So the fact is that there is the need for the service. And of course, I normally organize a white goods cleanup because I am very passionate about the environment. And of course, we know in the past, a lot of persons have been doing indiscriminate dumping when they have some of these white goods. Instead of taking them to the landfill, they dump them indiscriminately, and that is not good for our environment. They end up in the guts, they end up in our ocean. And so we're always hopeful that when we have these initiatives, that it's a good way of preventing indiscriminate dumping. And so I'm organizing that again for the people of Gingerland this coming Saturday. And of course, some people don't dump because they believe it's a cost. They know it's a cost. Even though the cost is cheap, there is a cost, and some people may not have it. And so your caring area representative has organized it again for this Saturday. And we will have bins. We will have 5 bins available. We will have one at Rollins Village, right there by Jewel Shop. We will have one down at the community center yard in Hickman's. We'll have one at Claygut, right there opposite the below the Adventist church in that open area there. We'll have one in Handy's Road above the there's an empty lot of land above the Wesleyan Holiness Church, and we'll have one in Matchman's in an empty lot of land above Wenty. And so persons can utilize any of the bins, irrespective of where you are. You can utilize any of the bins. The bins are there to serve you. And so those of you who can take your stuff to the bin, if you have transportation, you can take your stuff to the bin. I encourage you to do so. The bins will be in place from Friday night. And so early Saturday morning, you can start utilizing the bins. Last year, we had to make several trips because there were really a lot of stuff that people had at home. And so those of you who have stuff to take, you can start Saturday morning early. Those of you who need transportation, because I've already been getting calls for transportation. And so for those of you who need transportation, I'm going to give some numbers out that you can call to get transportation to take your stuff to the bins on Saturday. And so up in the Rollins area, you can call 669-3707, and that's Mr. Philip Walters, 669-3707. For those of you who will be taking stuff to the Hickman's bin, you can call Mr. Junior Mulcair at 668-1290. In the Clegot area, for those of you who will be utilizing that bin, you can call 660-2212. That's Polo. And the bins in Hanley's Road and Matchman's will be serviced by Teshron Maynard, 664-1288, and Caldon Maynard at 663-1368. And so, as I said, once the buildings are filled, they will be emptied, and so it is. Please, those of you who have stuff, call these numbers, or you can call my number, 662-6043. We want to ensure that persons utilize the service and do not engage in indiscriminate dumping. I know time is running, Mr. Premier, and so I just wanted as well to remind members of the general public of the ordination service that is taking place this next week, Wednesday, the 31st of May, at the St. George's Anglican Church, a very historic occasion where the Reverend Crispin Gomes will be ordained to the priesthood. He's from Anguilla. He came to us in September of last year. Has been doing an amazing job, and so we want to come out and show him our support. It's been 43 years since we've had an ordination at our church, and the good thing about it, it will be done by our very own Bishop Ernest Fleming, and it will be the first time that an ordination will be done in Nevis by an division. So that makes it even more historic.
Wow.
And so we want persons to come out and witness what could be something a once-in-a-lifetime experience for some people, because some have never experienced an ordination, and some may not experience another one. And so it's at 6 o'clock at the St. George's Anglican Church next week, Wednesday, the 31st of May. And I just want, as well as I wrap up, because other persons may need to call, I just want to say thanks to the many supporters and patrons who came out to support our Empire 35 and over dance this past Saturday. And one thing I forgot to mention, Premier, when we spoke about the health care, we forgot to mention that the services available at Alexandra are extremely reasonable. You can't forget that. So it's good health care at a nominal fee.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Thank you and good night, Deputy Premier of Nevis, the Honorable Eric Evelyn, who made, I think, some excellent points, and who has invited us to come out to the event, very historic event at the church there in Gingerland, the Anglican Church. But also, of course, he has reminded us of his white goods cleanup that he's doing in his constituency, and I commend him for that ongoing effort. Let me, at 5 minutes to the hour, say that we are having a medical fundraiser, and I want to, at the outset, thank the Honorable Alexis Jeffers, who continues to contribute in a massive way to the benefit of the people of St. James. He came up with this idea, and he is a kind of guy who, once he comes up with something, he sticks with it. And so he's doing a medical fundraiser on Monday the 29th of May, which is Whit Monday. Butlers and Bricklin communities, and he is really pulling out all the stops. Listen, it is from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. They're going to offer you breakfast from 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. Brunch from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. Lunch from 12 to 4 p.m. And dinner, he said, a sunset menu from 4 p.m. until. So here, they're offering breakfast, lunch, brunch, lunch, and dinner. And then, in terms of entertainment, Grandmaster's Band is going to be there. Odyssey Band is going to be there. EK Real Right Entertainment is going to be there. DJ Wet Dot, DJ Zimba, DJ Lalbo, Frank and the Snowflakes, and the Boys String Band. It is going to be all happening at Brick Hill Main Road from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. and all day fair with Monday. We want people to go out and support. We want our friends to come from St. Kitts and support. The entertainment is going to be there. The food is going to be there. And again, I commend the Honorable Alexis Jeffers. He recognized that in the constituency there's some folks having some challenges in terms of medical challenges, and we understand it costs for treatment, and so he's coming forward in a major way. All proceeds from the event, all proceeds, that's important. It's not for profit, it's an event to help people. All proceeds will go towards medical expenses for Mr. Thomas Dorr, Mrs. Miranda Alexander, and Mr. Tesson Manders Clark. So whatever is earned will be shared between Mr. Thomas Dorr, Mrs. Miranda Alexander, and Mr. Tesson Manders Clark. So you can go get breakfast, brunch, lunch, dinner. With Monday the 29th of May. And it all happened at the Brooklyn Main Road from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. Grandmasters Band, Odyssey Band, EK, DJ Wet Dot, DJ Zimba, DJ Lalbo, Frank and the Snowflakes, and the Boys String Band. All of those will be there to entertain you, feed you, to make sure that you have a good time. And so, again, huge kudos to the Honorable Alexis Jeffers. Huge kudos. This is a man who touches people. This is a man who does hard work for people, and he has continued to do so. Not daunted. He had a bad result in the last election. He hasn't gone into hiding because he understands his calling is to serve people, and that is exactly what he's doing. So kudos to him for that, and I believe that that speaks to his resilience, and it speaks to the approach that we've always taken in this party of serving people. This is an excellent cause, money to help those who need that assistance for medical care, and therefore we ask one and all to go out and to support. On Friday, we have the wrap-up of the STEM event at the Malcolm Guichard Park. Please go out and support our young people so that they can feel that, they can see that, and they can experience it. Tomorrow, Liberation Day, African Liberation Day. I thank Iroy again for coming and for speaking with us, and those conversations are always interesting. In fact, we had some messages that came in on the phone from overseas saying that it was a fascinating discussion, and so again I am truly grateful for that. It is 9:59. It means that we are at the end of the show. Show ends at 10, and so I just want to take the opportunity to thank all who called, my brothers Troy and Eric, and all the others who called in as well to share their perspectives, and we hope that we'll be back here next Wednesday after the ordination. We hope that God gives us the strength to come and certainly to be a part of this show. This then is our show for this evening. I wanted to say one final thing before I left. I know the banner struck up, but I'm sure they'll allow me half a minute to say so. I'm just trying to pull it up here on my phone, and that is to extend my deepest condolences to the family of Pauline Agatha Brister. Everybody knew this wonderful lady, and I want to extend my condolences to her entire family. She is having a funeral service tomorrow, May 25th. It will be at the Anglican Church. I believe it is in Gingerland. Methodist Church, forgive me, in Gingerland. Unfortunately, I have the Parliament tomorrow, but I would want from this rostrum to extend deepest condolences. Always a beautiful smile, such a beautiful woman. And so we extend condolences to those who mourn. That's our show, ladies and gentlemen. Good night. God bless you and keep you. And we look forward to being back with you next week, Wednesday.
The views and opinions expressed on the preceding program were solely those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Nevis Broadcasting Company Limited or its advertisers.